The floodwater moved into Theodore and its 300 residents moved out.
On the 28th of December 2010, the rural town of Theodore made history. The township west of Bundaberg sits at the junction of the Dawson River and Castle Creek. Residents were trapped and a mandatory evacuation was called, making Theodore the first Queensland town to be totally evacuated.
I think that you're never quite the same after any major crisis, but I think generally the town is as strong, if not a little bit stronger than it was before the flood. When we came in here, the water was basically up to here, so we were moving through, and we used to run a dispensary, so all of that was covered with medications.
A fleet of helicopters came in, taking the last of the locals and their pets to safety.
It was a very orderly process, and it was all done by private helicopters. It was truly amazing. There was no way out of town, all the roads were cut, and it was these single choppers that came in. We had up to 6 of them landing outside the hotel at any one stage.
I had to laugh at my, dad, who'd been a Vietnam vet, who heard the choppers coming and going over those couple of days before we were actually evacuated. And he said to me at one point, "Good God," he said, "a man would think he was back in Vietnam," just with the noise of the choppers flying overhead for those few days.
We didn't ever think that it would come to this.
Obviously we don't know how long it's going to be before they can come back. I do feel for them.
Those who fled have set up a home at a mining camp in Maura. It's the first time in the state's history an entire town's been evacuated.
Anglo-America just put their hand up and said, look, we can take people from Theodore, because at that stage we didn't know how long we were going to be out of town. We thought maybe a couple of days, not that, week plus 10 days that we were out of town.
Also on hand through the evacuation has been the long-time local doctor and medical superintendent of the hospital, Bruce Chater. But he too has suffered because of the record flooding hitting Theodore, with his home and practice built up over 32 years, waist deep in water.
It's heartbreaking, really.
It caught us by surprise, a bit like everyone, but more so that it was school holidays. We were fairly well off the communication grid.
I would have been 5 going on 6. Rain like you'd never seen it, but yeah, and going past over the bridge every day, just seeing it getting higher.
I lived out of town, about 40 k's or so, and I remember just lots and lots of rain when I was 5 at the time.
I was only 3, so I don't really remember too much, but I remember having to leave the house and going out of town to be safe.
So the water was right through here, and you can actually still just see. So it was actually up about that level.
Wow.
Right through here. These are our old medical records, which thankfully we put on computer in 2010, just before the flood. We tried to save as much equipment from the general practice, which was next door in those days. You could hear the air and the water mixing inside the walls, because there was this bubbling noise. So as the water soaked in, it was displacing the air, and you could hear the walls were gurgling.
It's the second time this year flooding has ravaged cotton crops around Theodore.
Because it was an extremely wet season, and there seemed to be a flood peak pretty much a week apart with 3 distinct flood peaks, and as it was all coming up, we were trying to protect our crops as much as we could. And after the first one went down, we thought, oh well, we've saved a fair amount, and then the next one came along, and I thought, well, we'll try and save what we can and everything else, and then it pretty much took the lot. So then we changed our focus in helping the town.
Theodore's been a ghost town until now. After 10 days, the residents have been allowed back in to see what the floods left behind.
When the need for clearing homes and that sort of thing was happening, people from properties that hadn't been flooded, they were really great. They came in and they worked hard.
Seeing the community band together afterwards. Volunteers came from everywhere.
I always said if I teared up, it was when someone showed me some kindness. Not so much, I didn't cry over the mud and slush. I mainly just got upset with people's kindness because I think you realise how people care. I think it's a spectrum of emotions. I don't think we can say that everyone was fine.
Some people suffered very badly. I mean, they lost their livelihoods, they lost their farms, and it was tougher for them. And I think then we've since then had to help them get through that loss and those things. But for most people, it was a matter of just trying to get on and sort things out.
No one was killed, and no one was seriously injured, so that was the biggest plus for our town.
I thought, well, that'll put retirement plans down the track a fair way. And but anyway, here we are. 10 years later, we actually managed to hang on.
We used to actually have it was weekly barbecue where the whole town, we'd just have free steak and some salads, and we'd all meet in the middle of town and just get together and let it rip for a while. And I think there was free beer too, but everyone could get in, and it's that emotional support that's really important. I think there's a tinge of sadness certainly still around about what people have lost along the way and the crisis they went through. But I think crises, in a funny way, have a way of developing strength and character in people, but also in towns too.